Good morning, good evening to everyone. My name is Neeraj Jadhav, and I'm a senior industry analyst with Frost Sullivan, and I lead the medical devices and imaging cluster. I welcome you all to our growth webinar and on discussion on the growth opportunities in continuous health monitoring. So no, we have chosen the discussion and related to continuous health monitoring to to understand the implications of the technology and how it is able to impact all the stakeholders, be it the patients, the health professionals, as well as the healthcare providers. Uh, we will be talking more about it and gain insights from our esteemed panelists during the course of the discussion. Now I want to hand over to my colleagues, internal Frosties, Ashish Kaul, and ask him to introduce himself and the other one.
Thanks, Neeraj. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for your time on this webinar. As it is said that currency is the most, time is the most important currency. So thank you for your time. Thanks to our panelists as well for sharing their technologies and their insights. I'm Ashish. I work with the medical device and imaging team here at Frost, along with Neeraj and Isai. We have been tracking technologies for several years now, and very excited to share what we have today on this exciting topic of continuous health monitoring. Thank you. Over to you, Isai.
Thank you, Ashish. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Isai Karthik. I'm a senior research analyst at Frost Sullivan, where we focus on medtech and healthcare innovations. My background is basically life sciences research. So I have a PhD in cell and molecular biology and 2 years of postdoctoral experience in the same field. And after joining Frost, I've loved to make the transition from life sciences to medtech innovation syndicated research, as it has allowed me to understand the biology behind these real world techs. Can't wait for the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Isai and Ashish. Now I will ask our esteemed excellent panelists to introduce themselves. To start with, Steve Zhu. Steve, if you can introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Steve Zhu. I am the CEO, co-founder of Cyber Health. I'm a physician engineer. Also hold an academic appointment at Northwestern as the medical director of the Query Simpson Institute for Bioelectronics. Over.
Thank you so much, Steve. Venk, if you can introduce yourself.
Good morning, good evening to everybody. Venk Vardhan, CEO and co-founder of Nanoware. We're a New York City-based healthcare at home digital diagnostics platform offering self-administered cardiometabolic assessments at home via the clinical research and employer-funded health plans. I'm a biomedical engineer in chemistry by academic training and look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Venk. And last but not least, James, if you can introduce yourself and your company.
Hello, everybody. My name's James Malt. I'm the founder and executive chairman of BioIntelliSense. This is a company that's the culmination of about 25 years of effort to develop simple, cost-effective, very scalable, continuous patient monitoring and an AI system using a medical grade FDA wearable, and very excited to talk about really this profound moment that we're all entering into with the advent of combination of continuous monitoring and AI monitoring systems for both in the hospital and at home.
Thank you so much, James, for the introduction. The agenda for today's discussion is, we would like to highlight about the overview of continuous health monitoring technologies, Then how this technology is able to usher in a shift towards preventive and personalized healthcare. Then we would be discussing the technology attractiveness dashboard, and what are the like the dynamics, shifting dynamics in this space. This would be followed by the key technologies, the segments that we have segregated related to this technology, and then the role of AI and how it is able to shape up the predictive analytics in this space, and finally the growth opportunities. Yeah. So continuous health monitoring technologies has had a profound impact, and when I say profound, that impact has never been felt much more, but post the COVID-19 pandemic, which drastically changed the overall landscape of how monitoring was done, and this has helped in usher in the use of this technology more aptly in the healthcare domain. The focus on continuous health monitoring has never been never been felt much more lately, because of its implications of not only tracking the healthcare, the individual's health parameters, the vitals such as heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate, but also monitoring them in real time, uh, and providing those insights to the healthcare professionals to enable them to understand how is the clinical deterioration at the patients, in the patients, and if there is need of any early intervention that is required. So just wanted to understand from my esteemed panelists, both from Frost as well as from the external panels. How do you feel continuous health monitoring has shaped up pre as well as post COVID-19, and how do you foresee its implications, especially in early disease diagnosis and improving outcomes, and how it is able to improve overall the care delivery for the patients?
I think I can give a short example, Neeraj here. So I was in interview with a stakeholder in the industry, and he did mention that the traditional problem with as basic as blood pressure monitoring was that it is not continuous. It has to be done in hospitals or in clinics, and there are high chances that when the patients are at home in their sleep, there are high chances that the blood pressure spike might get missed, and which obviously have negative implications for the patients. But then there are they never had any option, right? Because doctor have to stick to whatever guidance is. But now with the introduction of continuous health monitoring technologies, be it wearables, be it some other form of devices, which we will be talking on the slides ahead. So it kind of gives the upper hand to clinicians to monitor patients when they are at home, when they are in sleep, and then see the holistic picture and understand how does the blood pressure fluctuates during the night, during the day, during the activity, or when the patient is normal. And then this basically helps them to determine what actually is happening with the patient's body and then design the treatment according to that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any debate. COVID was an unfortunate but important forcing function that helped all of us accelerate the recognition that remote patient monitoring is a powerful opportunity for delivering care in any setting, especially now you see the ability to collect this data, as we're talking about this morning, continuously, and be able to have the opportunity to see trends and early deterioration to be able to do something about it. Prior to COVID, remote patient monitoring and even wearables were kind of stuck in death by pilot, very small programs that weren't scalable, and there was a lot of hesitation on the part of the medical community to rely on these measurements. And obviously, with COVID and hospitals being full of patients, we had no other choice than to rely on these modalities. And here we are today. I think we are at the inception of an irreversible expansion of these technologies, both in facilities and at home, and finally starting to be able to move the side of care out of the facilities and be able to deliver more and more significant care into the home.
And I think there's to add to Dr. Malt's points, I think COVID taught us a couple things with regards to adoption as well. So Dr. Malt alluded to that it was death by pilots because there really wasn't a payment mechanism in place, particularly here in the US, for technologies that were looking at the acute reaction time to sort of free up beds in the hospital, get people home in a hospital at home context, but also ultimately flagging for Ashish's points on early diagnosis and preventative care. We still have a long way to go on the latter, on how payment models and reimbursement, particularly here in the USA, will follow. But I think the point I wanted to make is, since COVID, where it really shifted the need from a nice to have to a need to have, you're seeing the bar from both the provider community or the hospital community, the physician community, as well as the patient community and or consumers continue to push up on what the need and the validation and the biomarkers of the wearables. As wearables started, it was just step tracking, then it might have gone to pulse rate or heart rate. The consumer and the physician, as well as our regulatory bodies, are really demanding more volume and more sort of efficacy from the wearables. So I think the bar is going to continue getting pushed up, which is great for healthcare as a whole, and I think will start leading us towards this early diagnosis and more preventative care, because we're not there yet from a total distribution standpoint.
And completely agree with that point. And that brings us to an important question about how the use of continuous health monitoring has shifted this scale towards the proactive or preventive care from the current or the traditional approach of reactive care. And that is what we are going to talk about in our next slide, which is how continuous health monitoring has shifted towards preventive and personalized healthcare. So, the previously, much of the approach that was there was more of having a more of fragmented approach of checking the vitals of the patients, and that is how, like, in whether it is in clinical settings or outside of that, the vitals tracking was not on a continuous basis, which did provide a more correct understanding of what clinical deterioration was actually happening and what stage. Then the interventions were not particularly targeted, and because of that infrequent monitoring. So this in all had and because it was more of a one size fit all approach that skewed the kind of treatment that was given to the patient, and ultimately the outcomes were not as desired by the health professionals, which in total increase the healthcare cost for the healthcare providers. So continuous health monitoring has totally changed it and has necessitated the fact that monitoring the vitals on a continuous basis can improve the outcomes for the patients. So this approach has changed the dynamics, uh, and I would like to ask our panelists to share their thoughts on how the technology has impacted in terms of data collections, the treatment monitoring of the vitals, and ultimately the treatment that is delivered to the patients, and how that has improved the outcomes for the patients.
Being a thoracic surgeon and somebody that's run the intensive care unit for many years, we're in a situation where for the past 50, 100 years, not much has changed. We, even in the hospital, outside of the intensive care unit, make measurements on patients, routine vital signs once every 4 to 6 hours. And certainly when these patients are at home, whether it's post-acute or significant chronic conditions, traditional practice, we're lucky if we get any data, or if we did, it was something once a day. What's changed dramatically is the ability to have the signal and multiple signals and multiple parameters at a high frequency, and be able to have that data available is the starting point. But what we'll also talk about is even in the intensive care unit, where we're generating millions of data sets per hour per patient, these patients are still crashing. So there is still a failure. At the end of the day, what we're all hoping to do is to be able to see things in advance of a crash, see things before the deterioration progresses, and have the opportunity to intervene and keep them out of the emergency room, keep them from readmission. And that's the combination of now being able to have this rich data monitored by AI systems that can see the subtle changes in this data. The problem is, even with all this continuous data, humans can't see the subtle signal until it's too late. So it's really the powerful combination of these two elements that together right now, over the next 5-10 years, are converging, and it's very much like the autopilot system in the cockpit of a commercial airline. Those pilots have the benefit of that AI system to watch all the sensors across that airplane and inform them of what's going on before there's a fatal failure. So it's a very exciting time, and these tools are really going to, very likely, and the intention is to make every clinician look like a genius, so that we're not chasing a crash and figuring out after the fact why this might have happened. We can see it coming as bright as day and be able to have the opportunity to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say there's a high degree of inherent validity that if you're able to do continuous monitoring, you'll provide better outcomes. But I think ultimately the clinical evidence and the literature, I would still say, is promising, but there isn't like clear, unequivocal truth that doing that is going to lead to overall outcomes. I think overall, like if you think about the example of why are iRhythm, these kind of patches, or the standard of care for arrhythmia monitoring, they did very, very rigorous clinical trials, RCTs, et cetera. And I think in clinical continuous monitoring, the problem and the challenge is that it's highly variable. A medical patient is different than a surgical patient, it's different than a hospital at home patient, is different than a clinical trial patient. There's a lot of diversity there, right? Where the intervention of continuous monitoring has a lot of complexity. So I think overall, like the recent systematic reviews, et cetera, show positive signal, right? That continuous monitoring reduces mortality, reduces AKI, reduces sort of ICU readmissions. But we still need to build a deeper body of evidence for specific patient use cases, for specific technologies, I think, to really drive that field forward. So I think there's a lot of hope, a lot of promise, but I still think that if you look at the example of how, you know, ECG patches, right, have taken over the diagnosis of atrial fibrillation, there's still an evidence gap from my perspective.
Yeah,
Again,
but
sorry, just to rebut that, you know, the distinction that you're drawing out actually is a good example. The issue with Holter monitoring and iRhythm is that it's delayed. They actually wear this patch for 2 weeks and then mail it in, and it gets analyzed basically in retrospect. And so real-time or near real-time monitoring has a dramatic benefit that you're not seeing with things like Holter monitoring, which is looking at things you know, after the fact. So a lot of it is the timeliness and the actionable scenarios for being able to intervene. But you're right, there's a lot of this is just at the beginning of a journey that's certainly irreversible. There's no going back when you see the impact, and you know, we're at 500,000 patients with what we're doing, and you couldn't find any of the nurses or doctors that are using these tools that would say they'd want to go back to a century-old tradition of an occasional measurement.
Yeah, I'm not comparing what we're doing, which is continuous vital signs displayed in real time, with the iRhythm product, right? I'm simply comparing the trajectory of clinical evidence generation and adoption, right, by the broader community. There's only 2 medical wearables that have established themselves as standard of care. One is CGMs and the other is ECG patches, right? And why is that, right? Why do they become standard of care? And I think we need to go beyond white papers to RCTs, right, to demonstrate that in certain populations where they're not continuously monitored, that continuous monitoring leads to those specific outcomes. Generally, we've required or depended on propensity matched observational studies, right? And so I think that ultimately someone's got to be brave enough to do that. And maybe it's BioIntelliSense with the scale you guys have to kind of definitively say that. I agree with you. Like nurses, doctors, once they move to this paradigm to stick on a sticker, not worry about it for 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, that's so much better than rolling a cart over every 4 to 8 hours, right? But I would just sort of argue that if we in this continuous monitoring vital signs space want to become the de facto standard of care, we need to look back at the other 2 wearables that have established themselves, right? And why is that? I would argue the clinical evidence is stronger.
I'll just add to Dr. Mall and Dr. Zhu's points. I think they're great. I firmly agree with the point of proving out in randomized clinical studies, as well as real world evidence studies in a phase 4 basis after FDA approval. And I also agree with the point that the case studies of ECG arrhythmia patches, as well as continuous glucose monitoring or CGM, are the ones to point to. I'll add that those are 2 very vertical and defined diagnostic categories, and already sort of require a diagnosis. Part of what we're talking about today is the treatment of diagnosed patients all the way going upstream potentially to early diagnosis and prevention. And on the latter part, not to repeat anything on the great things that are my fellow panelists mentioned on the treatment and sort of monitoring for sick or near sick patients and managing their condition. But now when we get to the prevention side and the early diagnostic side, for the first time in my career, and I've been in this 10 years, and I'm sure my colleagues have been in even longer, I've been very dismissive of this convergence of consumer and clinical healthcare. I'm not at this point right now. I think there's been some recent case studies and examples that show that at least a smaller fraction that's growing of consumers are trying to get into this early diagnostic and preventative care game. And that's bringing new entrants in, which Dr. Zhu, I completely agree, have not yet clinically validated and really shown their efficacy in big RCT or randomized clinical trials. I think they're moving into the 510K and FDA space, which is encouraging. But when you talk about the consumerization or the convergence of clinical and consumerization, you not only have to talk about efficacy and the ability to show the physicians as well as the nurses confidence that their product works, which that bar is continuing to grow, but you also have to focus pretty heavily on some of the aspects that Dr. Malt mentioned, which is how do you incorporate AI into the data sets? You can't just give everyone unstructured data. If the unstructured data is validated, how do you use AI to structure that data, make a seamless user experience for not only the patient and or consumer, but also the caretaker, physician, and RN? And I think those things are going to be pretty important. All of those combined from what Dr. Zhu and Dr. Malt said is going to be pretty exciting over the next 5 years. We're already seeing some good case studies with some of the CGM companies going over the counter and doing partnerships with some of the consumer wearables, which are pretty encouraging to sort of expand the awareness horizontally.
Absolutely. And this brings us to our first poll question about how or what are the factors that are driving the need or necessity of continuous health monitoring. So Ashish, could you take us through this slide and continue with the discussion about the impact of continuous health monitoring?
Thanks, Neeraj. So let me start by giving you a snapshot of why we think that continuous health monitoring technologies are so attractive in today's world, in addition to what panelists have said so far. So if you look at the top left side, one of the key challenges in just US alone is that 6 in 10 people are living with at least one chronic disease like diabetes or the number of heart diseases present there. Now, this rising burden is creating a strong need for technologies such as what we have today, the wearables or contactless devices to continuously track the health parameters and support in the early intervention. Now, from innovation standpoint, on the top right side of the slide, we see that the innovation momentum is also huge. Like if we just see data from 2022 to 2025, more than 19,500 patents have been published so far in this space. Now, this clearly shows the interest from the startups, from technology giants, which are racing to secure IP, and they are trying to make sure that we can develop products as fast as we can. The another driver which we see is the technology convergence, basically the combination of different industries or different technologies, like combination of biosensors, AI, IoT, mobile apps, etc., which are coming together and making these solutions more smarter, more faster, and even more reliable. Now, we see that this conversion will make the products more scalable and will obviously enhance the monitoring of patient not just in hospital but outside hospital. Finally, we see that there are few emerging technologies, like I mentioned before, like contactless health monitoring, which obviously is more comfortable as compared to the other type of technologies. But then obviously it does has challenges with the accuracy of data it collects, the reliability, the consistency, etc. So overall, we see that the space is very attractive and it has very significant unmet need. As Venk was mentioning, it is not just the patient who are sick, near sick, but then we have healthy patients which are looking for better options to prevent anything in future. And in addition to whatever the slide mentions, like the technology convergence or the number of patents. So I would take a pause over here, and will request Julieta if you can post the result of poll.
Of course, I'm sharing here the results. Please let me know if you can see them. We have a 50% for policy and reimbursement, 43% for lifestyle data integration, 29% for patient awareness, and 14% for chronic disease burden.
Absolutely. I think, Venk, you had a point in our previous discussion where you did mention policy and reimbursement as the key factor affecting these adoptions. So your view on this?
I think it's a combination of what Dr. Zhu said. I mean, you're not going to convince a reimbursement body or payer body without mountains of evidence on showing the outcomes. That's the way of our structure in medtech and digital health. It's unlike pharma when you get an approval, there's immediate pathway to reimbursement. That's never been the case with medical devices and with digital health. So the process is to get approval and then create that sort of mountain of real world evidence and outcomes to get reimbursement. The ECG patch companies were great examples of that, with iRhythm having to get approval, being the first patch, and then for 2-3 years collect a lot of evidence before they got their own Novitas codes and could kind of really start penetrating the market there. I think reimbursement on the side of prevention is going to be the next frontier that companies have to prove that evidence, because proving prevention outcomes is harder. But I think to Dr. Malt's point, there are aspects that we may not necessarily need to prove from a pure outcome standpoint because the landmark studies have already proven them. If you can reduce, if somebody comes up with a wearable that can continuously monitor improvement or degradation of arterial stiffness, we know what arterial stiffness and reduction in that will do from a landmark standpoint. We know what a reduction in HbA1c's of 1% will do from a cost standpoint. We know what a reduction of 10 points of systolic blood pressure will do, or glycemic control, or sleep. So I'm hoping that there's a convergence there on how we approach that. Is going to be collaboration between policymakers as well as industry as we move into this next generation, this third generation of wearables.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm very involved in a number of policy and reimbursement initiatives. For anyone interested, there's something new we created earlier this year called the Remote Monitoring Leadership Council, and then the work that we're doing with the Consumer Technology Health Division Board. Both of these have been engaged for years, actually, even back in the creation of the RPM CPT code committee and the reimbursement that we're currently seeing with RPM. I think what we're going to see in reality is less and less interest in paying for devices, and what you're going to see pretty universally is paying for outcomes. And so you've got to be able to, as Steve said, be able to have a body of evidence. Now, prospective randomized trials or large-scale implementations, whatever it takes to be able to have a compelling set of outcomes, and actually being willing to go at risk. In other words, saying, hey, we will implement this technology, and if it's reducing hospital length of stay, if it's reducing 30-day readmission, then we'll take a section or a success fee out of that beneficial outcome. You're going to see the industry being pushed in that direction, because that's how payers are orienting. Even there's something called TEAMS right now under Medicare, which is basically saying hospitals are going to be responsible for the total cost of care of patients for the 30 days after they're discharged. So then hospitals will be forced into finding ways to monitor those patients in order to keep them from showing up in the emergency room, in order to keep them from getting reimbursed. And so those hospitals will be seeking these kinds of capabilities in order for them to be financially successful.
Thanks. Do we have any other point, or can we move ahead?
I think, Ashish, we can move ahead.
Sure. Can we move to next slide, Julita or Neeraj?
Yes.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I will quickly run through the broader categories which we have done for this topic. And these are wearable devices, which are, the basic devices. And we will be discussing this in detail from our panelists. The devices which we wear, and it can track vitals like heart rate, blood pressure, etc. The next one is implantable devices, where the devices are placed inside the body, either by invasive process or minimally invasive process. One of the basic example and great example to understand is CGM, which is continuous glucose monitoring devices, which are very small sensor kind of devices placed just under the skin, and it can track your blood sugar for a longer period of time. And then we have, as we did mention, the contactless devices, where these devices are placed at a certain distance from the patients, and it can track different vitals and obviously give a continuous health picture of the patient, and help clinicians to make informed decision. So with that, I think now with all this discussion, we have to bring this to the life, and we will hand it over to panelists to walk us through their technology and what their offering is. So Venk, do you want to present your slides?
Sure. And Neeraj, I think I have control, right?
Yes.
So hi, everyone, again. Venk Vardhan, CEO and co-founder of Nanoware, healthcare at home digital diagnostics platform that offers self-administered cardiometabolic assessments using proprietary wearable sensor technology, server-based back-end ingestion and analytics, and then front-end delivery post unique AI diagnostics. We only sell into the contract research organization market, as well as the employer-funded health market. We do not sell into hospitals or health systems today, given the recent discussion around reimbursement. And we are also more of a preventative early diagnostic play as opposed to an acute care monitoring, as my colleagues started. So we talk about cardiometabolics, which is the sort of anomalies between the heart, lungs, vascular, metabolic, and hemodynamic systems. It is a crisis in the US. There's 93% of us, or 14 out of 15 of us, have at least one cardiometabolic anomaly. Depending on the US Census, that's 240 million adult Americans. And we appear outwardly normal, but for maybe decades. But 85 million of us have pre-hypertension, close to 100 million of us have pre-diabetes, and of that latter group, 10% become type 2 diabetics annually every year. Most importantly, these cardiometabolic anomalies is what leads to cardiovascular disease and diabetes. That costs our country in direct and indirect costs almost $750 billion annually. When you combine the cost of those two things, an American dies every 33 seconds from this. And most importantly, when we talk about employer productivity, significantly reduced by this burden of cardiometabolic anomaly increasing. You're 2 times more likely to have complications from the flu, which goes around every year, 3 times more likely from COVID. You could see that many of the significant complications during the pandemic, many had multiple cardiometabolic anomalies and or diagnosed comorbidities around cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So the problem is really virtual care alone can't tackle this #1 killer and highest cost, because holistic assessments can't be self-administered by a patient at home. They require traditional diagnostic tools and a licensed medical professional to apply these diagnostic tools. So I'm not saying anything that people don't know, but standard first-line tools like a stethoscope, ECGs, collecting your blood pressure, checking your lung volume, your oxygenation, your glucose, your sleep. And the problem with this is that when we do traditional assessments like this, none of those 9 tools are talking to each other. Our heart, lungs, vascular, hemodynamic, and metabolic systems talk to each other, which you need that sort of crosstalk to understand holistic diagnostics and the individualization and personalization of a therapeutic plan. And so what America really needs, there we go, is frictionless early diagnosis followed by a personalized therapeutic plan, pre, peri, and post the patient journey, if we're talking about early diagnosis and preventative care. And that should be able to attest and confirm existing outcomes that we're familiar with in cardiometabolics, but also be able to quantify those. So I'll close by saying what we've done at NanoWare. We have our own wearable. It has 4 510(k) clearances, one being special controls closer to the de novo side for continuous blood pressure. We are the only company to date that I believe is labeled for continuous cuffless blood pressure that can track changes of more than 15 millimeters of mercury. That's important due to Dr. Mull and Dr. Zhu's points about how blood pressure is a dynamic biomarker. If you just take a 30-second reading during a visit, it's going to be different 10 minutes later and certainly during sleep. So we replaced 7 of those diagnostic tools. We replaced the Holter functionality, the stethoscope, the blood pressure, the respiration, the lung volume, the activity, movement, and posture. We third-party via an SDK and data license partnership with a CGM company, their continuous glucose monitoring through our app and our server. So now you've got the CGM time synchronous with all of our 7 metrics, and then a partnership with a novel blood draw company that can draw self-administered 100 microliters, expecting their FDA clearance here soon. You combine all of those into a time synchronous offering, you can start to get all of the metrics around cardiometabolic health. And I'll close by saying the value of that is a provider plus a total solution like ours increases the impact of providing virtual care. A telehealth visit with backed up data around those 9 tools can make that that visit data driven. That can help providers bill for more tests, reduces the visit time so they can see more employees per day, and certainly reduces the burden of the staff and drive margins for the virtual provider. The employee or patient benefit is obvious. Don't need to go into a minute clinic or a hospital to see your physician. And then obviously the employer and payer, you get longitudinal population health management and really start to understand those differences that Dr. Zhu said. Every patient population that you put on is very different and unique, and being able to sort through using data-driven insights is important. Thank you for the opportunity to present. We'll turn it over to our next panelist.
Steve, over to you.
Great. So should I present my screen? Is that how it works?
I'll go through the slides.
Okay. I don't actually see my slides. Is it on the growth webinars thing or?
I can see your slides, Steve.
Yeah, I can see them as well.
So if you just go after the logo page. So thank you for that initial technology overview. So we are a wearables company, and our big, hairy, audacious goal is to make the world's physiological data continuous, predictive, and interoperable. We're a full stack company, so that means we do the hardware all the way to the AI algorithms. And we really look at the entire continuum of care, from clinical trials to even the neonatal ICU. And while it would be great to have a wearable that does it all, it's actually impossible given the different physiological and anatomical differences between a baby and an adult. So we make different wearables for different patient requirements. And that includes something very simple for clinical trials all the way to a continuous 12-lead ECG for the ICU. Next slide. So our core product is called ANI-1. It's FDA cleared for all vital signs for patients 12 years and up in the hospital or home. I think the wearable is really the starting point, because it's not enough to just have a cool wearable. You need to have the alarms, the alerts, the software, the integration with EHRs, all of it that plug into the complex clinical workflow of nurses and doctors that practice medicine to really enable continuous monitoring. And that's why we're proud of AMI-1 that does all the core vitals, but also things that are important in low acuity, like falls and skin ulcer risk and turn time and head of angle of the bed for stroke patients. All these kind of things, automating and making things continuous and wearable is a key part of what we do. We also want to make our sensors low burden. So 7 days battery life, rechargeable, reusable for lower cost of ownership, all that enabling continuous monitoring. And many will be surprised that the majority of deaths that happen in the hospital happen outside of the ICU. It's unplanned and unexpected. And this is where we want to turn those unmonitored beds to monitored beds so we can catch those deteriorations early, allow patients to go home safer and sooner without over alerting nurses. So thank you for that opportunity to present our technology. Over to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Over to you, James.
Thank you. If you could go to the next slide. So biointelligence is, as I said earlier, kind of the culmination of about 25 years of iteration to get to a place where, as you've been hearing, the ability to capture rich multi-parameter data on a high-frequency basis is enabled by, in our system, what's called the bio button. It's a small coin-sized device. It's rechargeable. It's waterproof. Has a battery life that extends up to 30 days on a single charge, measuring across a multitude of parameters, basic vital signs, temperature, heart rate, respiratory rate, and sleep and body position and gait analysis. All of this with the ability to effortlessly and with no burden to the patient, the family, or the clinician, be able to deliver this data up into the cloud. And then, as we discussed, it's really the cloud where the true value creation occurs, because data in and of itself isn't the value. It's the ability to see signal in that data that is actionable and create the opportunity for early detection and intervention. And that's where the other side of this coin is the analytics engine and the presentation of what we call an exception management dashboard. These together and individually are both 510K Class 2 systems. If you go to the next slide, what this is doing is effectively enabling a new model of patient care and patient monitoring that has profound impact on day-to-day care of patients, both in the hospital and at home. What you see here is one clinician now with the ability to monitor 400 patients each, 400 patients across multiple hospitals, both on the inpatient side and interchangeably at home, and the ability for the algorithms to be able to surface, we call it triage, those patients out of 400 who might be doing fine, those subset of that population that need attention, where it can be escalated to the bedside nurse and say, hey, the patient down in room 10 is starting to show some early signs of concern, go do an assessment. In the home setting, that can be a telehealth visit, or you can send somebody to the home to evaluate that patient, or at the very least, reach out to that patient and bring them into the clinic. All of these things create the opportunity to be able to prevent a trip to the emergency room, a rehospitalization, or in the acute care setting, the ability to see someone before that rapid response team code and transfer to the ICU. To finish, we've now, as I mentioned earlier, have a body of experience of over 500,000 patients getting continuous monitoring, both in the hospital and at home. tremendous impact, being able to reduce nurse labor associated with traditional vital sign monitoring by 50%, significant reductions in transfers to the ICU, reductions in ICU mortality, and even ultimately the ability to identify those patients who are also so stable, the opportunity to be able to start to initiate an earlier discharge opportunity, send those patients home and be able to monitor them very effectively in the home setting, not to mention hospital at-home programs. It's very exciting to see. This is really, as we talked about, irreversible. You ask doctors or nurses if they'd rather to go back to Q6 vital signs on the inpatient side, and it's almost a curious question, because bad things happen in between the interspaced monitoring of current care. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, James. Ashish, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. I think we have covered a lot of information on the products, and it's good to know the impact it is creating. So now we have the slide which talks about the role of AI and predictive analytics. With all the hype around AI, we also kind of have some views on that, and I would invite my colleague Isai to present that slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. I'll just quickly, share a few points due to the time concern. So, continuous health monitoring devices, may it be wearable patches or implantable or even the contactless sensor, they are designed to capture a stream of real-time physiological signals. So this results in voluminous data sets, often far exceeding what clinicians can, see in naked eye. So that's where artificial intelligence acts as a filter and an interpreter for this torrent of information. They can clean up the noise, identify the anomalies, and detect the trends, which is really invisible to the naked eyes. So as mentioned by the panelists as well, when combined with other data sources like electronic health records or the medical images, the AI component can provide a very good context-aware predictions, linking real-time monitoring to a patient's history and risk factors. So the ultimate value lies in the outputs they deliver. Like for a patient, it will be like the device provide a timely nudge. Like for example, take a walk now to avoid a glucose spike, or your heart rhythm looks irregular, seek a checkup. But for clinician standpoint, the algorithms can condense weeks of data into clear dashboards, have risk stratification. It can collate diagnostic reports. It allows for faster and more accurate decision making, right? Yeah, so that is how the AI is playing a very important role to, to turn massive unstructured data into precise and actionable insights. To provide preventive and personalized and timely healthcare. So with predictive analytics, the real value lies in anticipating risks early and personalizing insights, which will fit into the individual's unique health profile, or you may call it as a digital twin of a patient, making care more timely and actionable. So preventing the complications, reducing the unnecessary admission is definitely going to, reduce the costs both for the providers, or not just the patients, for the providers and also the healthcare facilities and the insurers. So what excites me is how the continuous health monitoring goes beyond individual healthcare, because this AI cannot just help in personalizing one particular individual's data, but when data from multiple patients is aggregated, it can definitely lead to something called a population level intelligence also. where, imagine being able to see how an entire cohort of patients respond to a particular lifestyle program, or spotting early sepsis, like, using a Corsanos wearable bracelet before it could just worsen in patients in intensive care units. So for me, that is where the impact of AI in these devices grow, because it helps the healthcare systems to act very faster, and in a large scale, it can also help the governments to allocate resources more efficiently, Ashish.
Yeah, thanks, Isai. I think apart from the benefits or the outcomes it offers to patient, the significant benefits is at the clinician side. Even in one
Yes.
of the slides where James mentioned that we have one operator handling different data from maybe 400 patients, right? So that's a huge, I would say, difference, making life easier for clinicians and healthcare staff. So yeah, a quick perspective from our panelist on the role of AI.
I don't think we can overstate the impact here. It's really truly on the inception of what ultimately will be pervasive in every aspect of how we take care of patients. And from a patient monitoring point of view, human beings just do not have the cognitive capacity to be able to digest a million pieces of data. I mean, the Institute of Medicine showed very nicely we have a capacity of no more than 7 pieces of information as the basis of medical decision making. So now when you're talking about wearables, being able to process that information, there's just no option but to start to rely on AI systems. I think just the last thought is the key here is the time that it takes to develop that trust relationship, and recognize that AI is a set of tools that benefit. There's a lot of hysteria, and I agree with Steve. We need the data to help people see the true benefits of these AI systems and the safety and the efficacy.
Thank you. Steve, your perspective?
Well, I think it's more important than the discovery of the microscope, right? Late 1600s, Anton Leeuwenhoek discovered, bacteria for the first time, changed the way we look at everything in medicine. I think AI is going to be bigger. It's like a microscope, and it's going to unveil things that we can't even imagine now. And the insights and data it reveals, from physiological monitoring to imaging, etc. I think 10 years from now, we'll actually probably be surprised how unambitious we were. We're thinking about the potential. So.
Absolutely. Totally agreed with you. Venk, last comments from you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Dr. Mall and Dr. Zhu. It is going to be the unlocking of the promise of wearables. I think we all got into the wearables game because we knew that this was going to be a data story. It wasn't a device story. And data, if you continue getting more of it and it's cleaner and more correlative, humans aren't going to be able to manage that. I think the thing that we're going to have to tackle as an industry, that many of us work with regulatory bodies and policy consortium groups like AdvaMed, which I sit on the board of, I feel like we're going to really have to work collaboratively with the regulatory bodies to really understand AI and workflow optimization in the hospital. That's one thing, but when we talk about how it's actually furthering diagnosis and or therapeutics, that comes back to the mandate of safety and efficacy. And I think it is incumbent upon us, as well as our partners in Washington, D.C., to really start coming up with standards that developers can follow and companies can follow. AI obviously is exciting, but when the machine is wrong, who is liable? And we still need to tackle that. And I think that's going to have to be, AI is good in the healthy, normal space, but when things get to the edges, like blood pressure, for example, we're going to have to know that AI can track the changes at the edges as well. And so I think that increases the burden on developers like us, but also through collaboration with our partners in DC. As Dr. Malt said, this isn't going backwards. This is here to stay, and it's only going to continue increasing. And it's going to take collaboration between the physician societies, regulatory bodies, and the innovators like ourselves.
Right. Collaboration is the way forward, I think, for adoption of AI and improving its accuracy in healthcare. So, Isai, maybe a couple of points on the AI before we jump to the next slide.
So we'll quickly glance through the growth opportunities, which is ahead in this continuous health monitoring market. So something is very intriguing is the self-charging batteries or energy harvesting in wearables. That is because that the current status of continuous health monitoring in most of the devices, whatever it is, ECG patches or glucose monitors, still depend on the rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. So it requires frequent charging or replacement, but many companies definitely have overcome this limitation by, having 15 days once recharge patterns. But still, it is still a major limitation because patients and consumers often will forget or neglect to recharge. This will be like, creating a data gap and reduce clinical reliability. And technologies like thermoelectric generators that can capture body's heat or nano generators or which can harvest motion and solar integrated variables are being researched in the space. So even now, like the companies like Invisa have self-charging batteries for their insole products used for, vital detection, fall detection and location trackers. So they use piezoelectric materials in the insole, which can convert the steps to energy and that can power the insole internal sensor. So no charging simply means they are very simple to use and will improve the compliance. And the next, growth opportunity is the biodegradable and biocompatible materials, especially for the implants. That's because most of the implantable loop recorders or cardiac monitors are made from metals or plastics, and they also have this lithium-based batteries. So that require a surgical retrieval or a replacement, which can pose risk of infection or tissue scarring. So with the rise in all these cardiovascular diseases and the need for minimally invasive, and long-term duration of monitoring. So really we need, a device which can naturally degrade after completing their function. There are some instances, research instances, for example, University of Illinois have demonstrated a bioresorbable wireless cardiac sensor that can just monitor heart activity and then dissolve harmlessly in the body after several weeks. So these devices are exploring, materials like silicon nanomembranes, biodegradable polymers, and even silk fibrines for that matter, considering the flexibility and predictable degradation timelines. And the next one, as Ashish mentioned earlier, it's like the frequency modulated continuous waveform radar-based contactless monitoring, especially in hospitals, particularly in intensive care units or in ICUs. Continuous monitoring is very critical. With the current methods, which is involving a lot of electrodes, pulse oximeters, it can just irritate the fragile skin, especially consider the neonate skin, which is so delicate, and restricted movement or creating discomfort in premature infants or critically ill patients is really challenging. So in order to overcome these, hindrances, contactless solution for like FMCW is being explored. And, already companies like Zanda Cardian in Canada has the first FDA cleared device with its sensor measuring the micro vibrations from the body to track heart rate, respiratory rate, and motion. And there are companies like the startups like Novalda and Sleepis are also working on radar-based sleep and respiratory monitoring systems for hospital and home care. So considering the scalability, FMCW radar-based monitoring can have the potential to become the next generation hospital care, which can seamlessly integrate with the existing monitoring techs and the EHRs.
Yeah, any closing remarks, James, from your end?
Really, this has been a great conversation and discussion. I think what's clear is we're at the inception of arguably one of the most profound moments in the history of patient care, and we'll likely look back on this 20 years from now or 50 years from now and say that the 2020s or that decade was a period where we realize the care of patients has been dramatically elevated, improved, costs reduced. I mean, the key here is these technologies will undeniably help us take far better care of more patients at a fraction of the cost. And it has to be all three of those things. Right now, we're in a financial predicament from healthcare economics that's on a very unsustainable trajectory. And in the past, new technology introduced into healthcare was the best technology at any cost. Well, those days are gone. And now the cost of the technology is a critical concern. And the things that we're working on have to show the cost effectiveness in pretty dramatic terms, or it really isn't going to see the light of day to be successful. In other words, nobody's going to pay for it just because it's cool new whiz-bang technology.
Absolutely. Thanks, James, and thank you for staying back with us.